Hi everyone, Dr. Hanisha here, and for today's Medical Monday, I kind of want to go into a little bit of history of medicine, but more so into ways that herbs and indigenous medicines have influenced the pharmaceutical model and our modern conventional medicine today. So before I get into that though, I do want to mention how excited I am that it's beautiful outside, the spring is in full bloom, and I get to be outside doing my videos again. I'm so excited about this. It's so much better than being inside. I love it. But okay, getting into the topic, the reason why I want to talk about this is because as I've been quarantined, I've actually been watching, of course, probably like everyone else, a little bit more TV, right? And what I've noticed is there's actually been a lot more Indian American representation or Indian representation in our American culture in general. And that's been really exciting for me because being an Indian American, I never really saw that representation growing up. So seeing it now is really exciting, and I'm grateful for that. What I struggle with though is, though there is that representation, there's still this like thing where there's a mockery of our traditional Ayurvedic medicine, and that kind of affected me. That bothered me a little bit because not only are there thousands of years of research in this where millions of people have benefited from this medicine, but it's also kind of putting into this idea that it's okay to appreciate this one part of your culture, but let go of other parts of your culture that may seem archaic or it's not good enough, right? And I don't agree with that. And the reason why I'm talking about this today is because I think it goes and spreads across all cultures, because every culture had an indigenous practice. And all of these medicines have led to where we are today. And so that's why I want to talk about that. So with that Ayurvedic example, let's start with that. So I saw someone who was mocking turmeric and turmeric paste or something like that. And I was like, well, what's crazy is turmeric has obviously been studied to be effective for a lot of conditions, especially reducing inflammation and being high in antioxidants. And it's helped so many people with so many different conditions, right? So it's all over the place. And now they do have pharmaceutical curcumin as well. And that was extracted from turmeric. And so I wanted to mention that part. But then beyond that, getting into the indigenous medicines of all the other cultures, or not all the other cultures, because I can't go over that in this short video, because there's so many and there's so much that I still don't know, and there's so much that no one in the West knows, right? Or people are still learning, because it's a lifelong process of learning with these indigenous medicines. And so another one of the examples I want to give is with traditional Chinese medicine. So that's another really big popular or medicine that's stuck around, right? So the reason why it's still popular and the reason why people still know Ayurveda is because they've persisted throughout history, whereas other traditional medicines may have kind of gotten squashed with, colonialism, imperialism, etc. Whatever the reason it may be, it's not as prevalent. And the reason why we talk so much about traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine is because they've just been such powerhouses. But most of my studies have been in indigenous medicine from the Americas, predominantly North America, but then also in Europe. So indigenous medicine from Europe as well. So there obviously are some practices that we still use. And one of the examples I want to give for traditional Chinese medicine was Artemisia. So Artemisia is wormwood. It is an anti-parasitic herb, and there was a Chinese doctor who was recently given the Nobel Prize for finding a great pharmaceutical drug that helped with parasites, and really all he did was use the Artemisia. And so that's another example. Another really cool example is Salix, is willow bark, which was extracted to create aspirin. So many people have probably used aspirin before, or at least know of the medication. And that was used in indigenous medicine for thousands of years before we ever turned it into a pharmaceutical, for the same reason or for the same benefits of relieving pain. So that's really cool and exciting. Another another example I love to give to everyone is that their vaccines. We talk about vaccines, and right now with the COVID pandemic, so much talk is about like when's the next vaccine going to come out, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, a man by the name of Edward Jenner has been given so much credit for finding vaccines or discovering them, but but the way that it actually got to America is a really interesting story, because it was a man who was kidnapped from Africa who had taught his the master, right? He taught the master that the way that they would help people from disease is by injecting a small portion of it into the human, so that therefore they won't actually get the disease. And that's how that started. And that guy, he was like, oh, let me try this for smallpox. And then that's how the smallpox vaccine even started, was actually, and this African man, his name was Onesimus. And I think it's important to give these people credit for the work that they've done and how they've brought that to our modern lives. And so again, that came from Africa, but vaccines have been used for thousands of years, like I said, in Africa, but then also in China, and there have been different types of vaccines in Ayurvedic medicine. So this isn't a new thing that we've just created in our recent modern conventional medicine. They've been around for many years. And so so I'm really excited to bring that point up. Another really cool thing, cacao. Sorry, I'm kind of sidetracking all over the place, but cacao is, of course, so that's how cacao beans are how we make chocolate. What would we do without cacao beans? I have no idea, because I live off of chocolate most of the time. But cacao has been shown to have so many antioxidant effects, and when the Spanish actually came to the Americas, they realized the indigenous people would consider cacao as a greater currency. Cacao was actually their currency, because if you had cacao, then you had health. And that was a big practice in indigenous medicine. It didn't matter. Gold wasn't actually helpful in supporting our health and well-being, and that's what we're learning today too. Money doesn't really help us. It helps us go so far, but how far beyond that? We don't necessarily feel good. Even Steve Jobs, being one of the richest men in the world, when he was passing, he talked about that. Money doesn't mean anything if you don't have your health. And that's what indigenous practices, indigenous medicines, they knew this. And that's why they valued these very, very powerful herbs to support their health as currency versus using something like gold. Another thing that I want to bridge, so a little bit bridging the gap of like bringing the indigenous medicine to conventional medicine, that actually started forming in Persia, or what is now known as Iran, because they had the influence of understanding and being able to study Ayurvedic medicine as well as Greek philosophy and medicine, and they kind of started combining the two, and they started doing a lot more research, and from there is where a lot of our modern medicine philosophies and practices really started. So that's super cool. And so I think I addressed most of the continents now, but what I do want to talk about, what I didn't talk about was things like what we're finding now, right? So now we're finding research on some ancient practices, and and other countries and other cultures are doing modernized versions of research on their ancient practices. So for example, one of my favorite practices, one of my favorite things to absolutely do is Shinrin Yoku, which translates to forest bathing, and that is a practice in Japan. And they've done so much research on the benefits of that, as well as sauna therapy. So that's one of my other favorite things to do. Infrared sauna therapy has blown up because of all the benefits of it. And in Japan, they've done so much modern research on the benefits of that. And then, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was just like all of these different medicines, these indigenous medicines, are the reason why we are even in the position we are today. I'm so grateful for conventional medicine because of of all the things that it has brought to us and Western medicine. But there are so many benefits and so many practices of the indigenous people that I think we need to value and talk about a little bit more, right? Like, talk about how aspirin actually came from an herb. It wasn't just this amazing scientific discovery. It was based off of what the indigenous people already knew. And so that is pretty much the conclusion. I think that's all I got for today. But I hope you all learned something. I know I kind of went all over the place, but I think it's important, like I said in the beginning, I think it's important to value and respect and honor these cultures and their traditions, because that is really how we are here today, and it influences our everyday practices in general. And we've barely scratched the surface. What I did was not even the tip of the iceberg, right? But in general, of understanding these ancient practices, we've barely scratched the surface. I had to know about 500 different herbs for my board exams, and that's not even 1% of the herbs that are out there, right? So there's so much to learn and so much that we could grow from and help so many other people heal, and maybe even create more modernized versions or pharmaceuticals from these herbs. Or we could use these herbs as well. So it really just depends. But there's so many studies that we can still do, and if we kind of close off to that idea, then we're really not helping modernize our medicine, and we're not helping progress our health and well-being of our communities at large. But that is all I got for you all today. Wishing you all Mahan Health, and I will see you next time.